Welcome back to another episode of With Love Mama, the podcast. I'm Tanika, but before we dive into today's episode, I just want to say a huge thank you for being here. This podcast was created to feel like a safe space where women can exhale, feel seen, feel informed, and feel a little less alone in whatever season they're moving through. So if the conversations that we've had have supported you in any way, one of the most beautiful ways that you can support the show is by subscribing, leaving a rating, or sharing an episode with another woman who needs to hear it too. It genuinely helps our podcast to grow and reach more women navigating preconception, pregnancy, birth, postpartum, and beyond. So let's get into today's episode. Let's get into today's episode. We're going to be talking about, as you'll be able to tell from the title, the way that like birth prep is not done maybe properly, or like why most ways that you are preparing for birth probably don't work. Because there's one thing to have all of the information and all of the like consuming all of the endless birth content, whether it's through like scrolling TikTok and your algorithm like rejigging to like suit what you've been looking into, doing courses, listening to podcasts, which is like what you're doing right now. Like you can do all of those things, and there's so much about having like all the education, but yet so many women are still entering labor and the birthing portal feeling so like freaked out, overwhelmed by all of the information they have and unable to, which I know you know if you've been listening to my podcast, this is the most important piece, unable to surrender, because we know surrender is the most important piece when it does come to birth and labor. And I just also want to touch on, just because I do understand this is such a wide topic, that when I am saying things, when I'm going like, for example, saying, surrender. I understand there's complications. Sometimes things do get in the way where it actually is taken completely out of our control. But I just want you to apply it to that, in that you can still, rather than resisting when things are completely taken out of control, because 9 times out of 10 in birth, it's probably going to happen, right? It's a very unknown experience. And that's not to come from a fearful place. It's just to come from a space of surrendering to whatever it is, and whatever way your birth does unfold is actually like the magic. So I feel as though for so many women, birth prep has become extremely like information heavy and not embodiment heavy. And if you don't know what embodiment, the difference between embodiment and just like knowledge is knowledge is, it's all up in our mind. We know the things, we know them, we like have all of the awareness around them. Embodiment is when we're actually like feeling it in our body. So I guess a really good example here would be when it comes to birth preparation. It's like I just said, in your mind, you know all of the things, but then when you get to it, you go into a fear state. Your body might, I don't know, like for example, tremble, or you have like a lot of doubt moving through your body. You can't connect to your breath, and you're very much like knowing what's going on, but feeling extremely like disconnected and overwhelmed. So I feel like that's potentially like the best example I could probably give in the sense of like embodiment in labor. But I think like there's so many different ways that women are preparing for birth, and this is why I wanted to bring this conversation here, because it's so easy, particularly either your first time or if you've had a really terrible experience the first time and then you want to change your story. It's really, really common for women to want to control the outcome and completely control everything. And now, of course, there's the element of you could just easily book yourself in for an elective cesarean, and then you know exactly the time, day, hour, all of the things that you're having your birth. But there are women who are wanting to control everything, but also have the vaginal delivery. And what this can look like is having a very rigid birth plan where you want it to go exactly in one direction. And if it doesn't go in that one direction, then all hell breaks loose because you're losing control. It can also look like being like quite obsessed with research, and like I think as well, like this is actually a conversation I just had with like one of the girls on a birth story episode that I recorded this morning, is it can also look like trying to like believing that like the perfect birth comes from all of this mindset preparation, but and in that wanting to like not have any medical intervention and like making all medical intervention and like everything wrong, and wanting it to be like, yeah, this like perfect, like I walk in at this time, this happens, blah, 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 blah. And I'm all for manifestation. I'm all for being informed, getting your research done. But I think there's just like that difference where you like pass that like point where it becomes obsessive. And the reason that this doesn't work as a form of like birth preparation is because birth is, like I've already said, it's so unpredictable. Like we actually don't know what's going to happen. And it's the power is when you can surrender to being okay with like whatever direction it takes and having a compass to follow rather than actually just one way. Because it's like it's if it doesn't go one way, it's going to go another. But if you don't have any idea of like how you'd want it to look, if it doesn't go that one way, you're then instantly taken out of control. And it just doesn't work out in the birthing space. So control really does just create a very fragile environment emotionally for you, because as soon as you start clocking that something's not going quote unquote the right way, you're going to be like, okay, like it's all going wrong. And then you'll be spiraling. And we just like don't want spiraling. And I think as well, like around the intervention piece, like I was saying, I was having this conversation, and we we're kind of just talking about how like we are so lucky to have access to the medical industry that we do have access to here, especially like in Australia. But there is a lot of like obstetric violence and all of the things where it's used in a way it doesn't need to be used. But if we can go in informed and have that idea of what we're wanting it to look like, we don't need to fear the actual intervention itself, because having that fear then creates just like more fear for if they are needing to be introduced on the basis of it actually being necessary to support a really safe birthing experience. I hope that makes sense. I feel like I'm going on a little bit of like a tangent there, but I hope that makes sense. um because I think like as well, like something just to bring to mind here is like the goal isn't about controlling birth. It's actually about remaining connected to yourself inside of birth. And that's why having like a session with myself as a doula, someone who can support you in looking at what does your birth compass, what does your birth map actually look like, rather than it being like this rigid plan that you're going in, you're going, it's got to go this way. Letting go of that form of control and actually having an empowering form of control is so different. It's actually crazy. Like I just like am losing my breath and I'm quite literally just sitting here speaking into the microphone. So just like third trimester things, right? Another way that women can be preparing for birth that just is not productive at all, because it, again, doesn't really work out, is if you are just like someone who's like, fuck it, I don't want to know anything. I want to go into it completely avoidant. The reason this is like a form of it's not probably going to work out is because there's absolutely no preparation. And this is when we, a lot of the time, can then have a lot of things freak us out in the moment, because you're not understanding how the hospital system works if that's where you're choosing to birth. You're not understanding different interventions. Your partner is completely unprepared. You have no idea what your body's actually doing. And I understand, yes, the point of like women have been doing this forever, but also we have the opportunity to inform ourselves. We have the opportunity to go in confident rather than leaving disempowered because you didn't realize that birth could go in that direction. And now, yes, for some women, each of these ways that I'm listing might actually just be perfect and fine. And like they might end up just having this beautiful experience. But I'm always going to be coming back to inform. Oh my gosh. Being informed is the best choice, because then you actually know what decision, like choices you are making when you are having to make decisions, because labor is a really vulnerable time for women. We're in a huge transition. We're literally in that moment of like becoming a mum, whether it's for the first, second, fifth time. You're quite literally moving through like a portal, if you want to look at it like in a very spiritual way. So you're super vulnerable. You're stepping through like literally a threshold. And if you're going into that and you have no, like you're not informed at all, you probably aren't going to feel super confident. You're probably going to feel quite a lot of like fear and oh my God, and you're not in that safe space. And we're always speaking about that. Like you want to feel safe when you're in labor, because that's what supports your body to open and to soften. So there is actually a huge difference between like surrender and avoidance. And I think that's like a really key thing to remember is if your birth prep is just being the I'll wing it woman, which it's probably not because you're here listening to a podcast, but it's just a great point I wanted to bring in is like, it's actually really important to have that information and go into it in a space where at least know like the phases of labor and ways that your partner could support you. You know what I mean? I think another way is, and like I am so not anti hypnobirthing. If you listen to my birth story, which is one of my first episodes, it's called my calm and unmedicated, or my unmedicated and calm home birth story, which I do highly recommend listening to if you're wanting to listen to a really positive birth story. I speak in that how like hypnobirthing, like I loved the Christian hypnobirthing tracks on YouTube. They were excellent for me. Freaking loved them so much. I spoke about that, but I think like something here is one thing I didn't do in my first pregnancy, not again in my second pregnancy, and I never actually really like tell clients to do this either. And, potentially my view on this may change over the years of being a doula, but for now, I'm still pretty strong in this, is that hypnobirthing won't save you. Yes, it can definitely allow you to feel safer in your body, comfortable in your body. It's so many great tools are a part of hypnobirthing, which I feel like I have utilized myself and have told clients to utilize, but I feel like I wouldn't fully put it all under the hypnobirthing umbrella. But I think like if you are going into it, doing a hypnobirthing course and thinking that is your key to a beautiful birth, that can also be like almost a form of like putting your trust everywhere outside of yourself. Because at the end of the day, you are the one, you're the birthing woman. You are the one who your body knows what to do. You've got this. And I think if you're always like listening to hypnobirthing tracks all the time and expecting to feel that calm state in labor the entire time, that's where you can kind of like maybe be outsourcing that power and not completely like feeling it within yourself. And this can also look like memorizing affirmations, all the things. And I think like my point around this is just more like hypnobirthing is a great tool, but it's not magical. Like if you're practicing hypnobirthing every day, don't go in naive thinking, well, my like birth is going to go perfectly because I know how to deep breathe and I know how to breathe my baby out and I know how like these affirmations and like my body's built to birth, all the things. And I'm not taking away from them, but I'm just more pointing out that if you're putting all of your power into that, just remember that you are the birthing woman, like I just said, and a calm birth is not necessarily the definition of like a successful birth. So as well, if you like are putting so much into like hypnobirthing and all of the things, and then birth begins to feel really intense, you may feel like you've failed, and that's absolutely not true. Birth is a very intense experience for you to go through. Another thing is like if you, I've got have a few episodes like around like how your triggers and all the things can come into the birthing space. And again, hypnobirthing isn't going to just cure those because you have been listening to affirmations every night. Yes, it can support you as a tool, but if you do have unresolved fear or trauma or your nervous system dysregulated, oh my gosh, your nervous system is dysregulated when you're thinking about things and you haven't actually like done that sort of like mindset work looking into how to support yourself in that way, that's where hypnobirthing can kind of be like you're using it more of a like way rather than a tool. I don't know if that even makes sense. I think it does. But like now I'm like kind of reflecting on what I just said. I'm like, do I make sense? But I make sense in my mind. So I'm sure it's landing for you. I am so sure it's landing for you. um, and I think as well, like with the hypnobirthing, like I really want you to know, like I do think like it is a great tool. Like I've just said, like just finishing on that part, it's a great tool, but when you're putting all of your power outside of yourself, that's where I think like it can be an issue, because if things do feel intense or full on or something, like you might be like, what the fuck, it's not working. But it's not that it's not working, it's just like it didn't prepare you for other parts of like, you know, birth. So like I'm always harping on about the birth preparation that actually matters if you're wanting to have like a really great birth. And this is all from my own belief system. So just remembering we all have different belief systems. Some people view birth as a completely medicalized experience and it's not, like, like we all have different views and that's perfect and fine. But for me, I truly believe nervous system preparation is the key to having a successful and positive birthing experience, whether it goes in the direction that you are wanting it to go or not. Having that awareness, knowing how to find relaxation under pressure, releasing your fears by like journaling and actually letting them be present and exist, like actually allowing them to exist. That is the biggest thing. Not shoving them down, actually allowing those fears to exist and sitting with them. Feeling safe in intensity, I feel like is like a huge, huge, huge thing. And like that doesn't have to look like holding bricks of ice when you're pregnant to like prove that you can, learn safety in intensity. It can just be like in those everyday moments when things are feeling a lot, how are you responding? And can you start to like bring yourself back down to earth and ground and like navigate them differently? I know something for me actually, like as I'm saying this, is I never like subscribed to like the whole like holding the ice bricks, whatever. But one thing I have always done is like ever since I can even remember, and this came in handy with birth prep, is rather than being like, oh, like I feel scared, like I don't know if I can do this, like when it comes to birth, I'd be like, for example, it's like cold, the water's cold at the ocean, like at the beach, and then like everyone's like, oh, it's so chilly, I don't want to get in. I would literally just say to myself, like when I was pregnant, I'll go, if I'm going to give birth, I can get in under this cold water, and I just jump in. And I feel like I would just use it as like a motivating tool to just like do things that are like hard. So even if it's like, you don't want to get up in the morning, it's like, well, don't mind me. My laptop just randomly died in the middle of that recording. So I know that I was getting up to doing things that were hard. And where I was going to go with it is, I think something really great that you can do is like how I was saying, I jumped in the water. Or if it's for you, it could be like in the morning, your alarm goes off and you don't want to get up. But instead of like going, okay, I'm going to snooze my alarm, you actually kind of use like giving birth as a motivator and go, if I'm going to give birth to this baby, I can get up. I can do hard things. Do you know what I mean? It's just kind of like, I don't know. It's just a fun little way to kind of challenge yourself, but I feel like in a healthy way. So yeah, that's just like a random little thing that I wanted to sort of bring in. I think as well, like just the reason that most birth prep does fail is because like you're preparing so much for like the pain and like all of the like techniques and like the logistics of actual birth, but not actually preparing for like the unpredictability and like that nervous system regulation, like I said. I think I may have even just touched on that. I'm so sorry. My laptop dying has kind of just thrown me out completely. And another really important part about like birth preparation is postpartum. We want to be like making sure that we're actually preparing properly for like postpartum, because that is like literally the minutes after you've given birth, like we're straight in there. So definitely nervous system preparation, understanding like the physiology of birth, which I do have an episode that's went up a few weeks ago around the different phases of labor. So definitely listening to that, because understanding like the hormones and like your environment's effects on labor and all of the things is definitely like a huge part that I believe a lot of people do miss, because you can do all of like the, how am I going to manage the pain? What are the techniques? XYZ. But then if you don't actually understand like the rhythm that your body is going through, yeah, it leaves room for a lot more fear. So when you actually do understand birth, fear can just decrease dramatically, because you understand what's going on and like it can get intense and all the things. Another really great way that you can actually prepare is by preparing your support team. So actually like letting your partner in on how you're feeling, telling him or whoever it is, this is how you might want to be supported. Explaining like, you may need to advocate, like all of the things like that. I just feel like it's just like preparing your partner, and just also just checking in on them. Like, how are you feeling about going into this experience? Is there anything that you need from me in the time leading up to it? Like things like that. I just feel like really good conversations. And yeah, like I said at the very beginning of this episode, I think a lot of people are focusing a lot on the mind and like not even like mind, just like the information, very information heavy, very low embodiment heavy. Like we want to sort of have that balance where you're embodied in it, your nervous system has caught up, your nervous system understands. But yeah, I just think that is really where I stand with it at the moment. So yeah, I think a lot of women who tend to feel like more grounded and everything are the ones who aren't going into it wanting to control every micro moment, every outcome, but they're the ones who like learn how to stay connected with themselves and move with the rhythm of softening and adapting and trusting and surrendering and just like all of that juicy stuff. So yeah, I hope this episode supported you and maybe brought some awareness to you that if you're currently hyperfixating on all of the information and obsessing over knowing all the things, but you haven't actually done, the side of it where you potentially are just like grounding into your body and listening to those thoughts and giving space to the fears and all of the things, that this is your invitation to do so. And just remember, like, I do have space where I can work with you virtually or in person on the Sunshine Coast, where we can actually do this work together to support you and prepare you to enter the birthing portal. Don't forget that if you loved this episode, send it to a mum friend, a pregnant friend, or someone you know who might also be preparing for birth. Share it to your story. Let me know your key takeaways, all of the things. And even send me a message and let me know what kind of birth prep you have actually been focusing on and how this episode may have supported you. Thank you so much for being a part of the podcast, and love you so much. And I will be back in your ears next week.